In today's video, we'll be examining why the common advice to just work longer if you can't afford to retire might be completely impractical and potentially harmful to your health and finances. Through analyzing research from retirement economists and labor market trends for older workers, we here at Rubino and Lang Wealth Partners have identified why continuing to work past traditional retirement age is becoming increasingly difficult for millions of Americans, regardless of their financial situation. That's why we are making this video today, to show you why delaying retirement indefinitely might not be a viable option, what obstacles older workers face in today's job market, and how to create a retirement strategy that acknowledges these harsh realities. Let's get right into it. Okay, John, we keep hearing the phrase, if you don't have enough to retire, you can just work longer. Why has that become the default advice that is given in today's retirement age?
It's a good question. I think a lot of financial advisors, when they're sitting down with someone and they realize maybe that they haven't saved enough to live the lifestyle that they were hoping to in their retirement years, might just, the default is, hey, you might have to work a little bit longer, save a little bit more between now and when you can retire. Another option might be from working longer is to alter the way you envision retirement, maybe reduce your spending to meet the needs of what you envision retirement to be like. And some people might not be willing to make that sacrifice. So working longer and saving more is probably the most viable option potentially.
Okay, so again, if you're in that retirement shortfall, you work longer or spend less in retirement, right? These are the two options, which obviously seem to be kind of logical, like those are your only options. But how have we as a society gotten to that point where those are our only two options?
Yeah, I think the primary way most people save money for retirement is through the traditional company 401k plans, maybe a 403b SEP IRAs. Um, More and more companies have gotten away from the pensions, and we've seen that shift, in the 80s, where companies have now kind of taken away pension plans,
Mhm.
which would be a stream of income for some individuals, and put the onus on the individual
Mhm.
for their own retirement. That now you have to save for your retirement, which takes, the weight off the companies to have a pension plan. So we're seeing maybe some Americans are not saving enough in that 401k plan to meet their needs.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about this before we started recording about how like my grandfather retired. He was able to retire in his early 50s because he had a company pension and Social Security, and he had enough life savings to be able to live off of those three. What was it called? The
I
three-legged
used to
stool.
call it the
The
three-legged
three-legged
stool,
stool. Yeah.
which is your Social Security, your
Yep.
pension, and then the income that is needed comes from the shortfall comes from your portfolio. So we call that the three-legged stool. And back in the day, um, that would suffice for most people.
And now I think of how my father's getting closer to retirement and how he doesn't have that pension at all. Like his company just didn't offer. Like you said, in the 80s, they kind of companies started to transition away from the idea of providing their employees a pension. And again, we can discuss whether that's a good or a bad thing, whatever. But that's the reality of today,
Yeah,
right? Companies don't offer pensions in the way that they used to. So you're looking at somebody who now has had one of these legs of the stool taken away. And now we got a wobbly chair situation, and that can create some sort of anxiety, right? As they're nearing retirement, because they're not sure if they're going to have that other, I don't want to say safety net, but a pension is another source of income that they used to have.
yeah. So when they look at their potential income streams that they have, is all of a sudden you just go to Social Security,
Hmm.
right? And then the shortfall has to come from your savings and your investments, your retirement accounts. And the question is that shortfall, did you save enough? And we're seeing more and more Americans, and the studies have shown that they're not saving enough to retire.
How widespread is this problem of insufficient retirement savings because of a lack of a pension?
I've recently seen a study that shows that every day, 10,000 people are turning age 65, and that's going to continue for a few decades. So we're seeing more and more people turn into that retirement age than before. And over 50% of those people who are turning 65 do not have enough money saved for retirement.
So you just said like so over 50% of people have not saved enough to retirement. So again, this goes back to that default of the option is well, just work longer, right? So it's become the default solution here. But let's examine how tough that can be for people when you're age 65 and older. The labor market in today's world isn't really conditioned for an aging uh, labor worker, right?
So when you think about it, the average weekly salary for an older worker in 2016, I saw a study that showed that their salary or their weekly income was around $936.
Okay.
And that has been reduced to $811 a week now,
In today,
in
okay.
today's dollars. And if you take inflation into consideration, so not only are you earning less, but things are costing more. So you're kind of getting the double whammy.
Yeah.
So individuals who think, oh, I'm just going to work longer and I'm going to earn X, Y, and Z between now and as I'm working as an older person, you may have a false sense of security of
Hmm.
what you're really going to earn. So we want to make sure that we get a real good understanding of what that income really will look like. We also looked at 20% of people who are unretired think they're going to work in their retirement years. And then we look at people who are actually retired, only 3% of those people actually are
Are
working.
actually retired
So
or
you're
working.
you're assuming you're going to work maybe a part-time job, do a consultant job, and if you're relying on those numbers and the numbers don't really pan out, you're kind of setting yourself up for like a false sense of security because if you're not working and you're not earning the amount that you were hoping to earn, all of a sudden your portfolio has to push out or increase the amount of income that you need from it. And if we're not saving enough and we're not being realistic, you're really not working with, a real plan.
This is such a compounding effect. It's the ability, again, like let's say you're in your late 50s, early 60s right now. You have a certain amount that you have. You think you're going to work X amount of years to get to that level that you need for retirement. A couple of factors that could happen. Again, we talk about, as you get older, you're not making as much as you thought. That study you just spoke about, the average person working in retirement or working over the age of 65 was only making $811 in today
Versus
versus
936.
so not only are they taking a paid cut, but living expenses have gone up. So that's one factor. The other factor is, again, health just plays a major factor in and of itself. We'll get into that in a minute. But the idea of you were just talking about how like you're not saving enough in your 50s and 60s, and this is a conversation that we can have a little bit about how we're going to actually get through to figure out what you can find out what your actual needs are. But if you get to a point where you have to retire or you're forced to retire, and like you said, 20% of people think they're going to work in retirement, even if it's part time or consulting. In reality, that Gallup poll show that only 3% do. That's a huge disconnect right there between what people think that they're going to be able to do as they head into retirement, between what they actually can do.
Yeah, that's why it's important to be honest and be realistic. Um, as you mentioned earlier, it's harder for older Americans to find jobs. There is some job age discrepancy.
Hmm.
As you get older, doing jobs becomes harder, right? We see companies maybe thinking an older person is more expensive to hire than maybe someone younger. So a company might make the shift to, hey, we want to hire younger people,
Yep.
and that might be the reason you see 20% of people thought they were going to work to really only 3. If you work in a job that might be demanding on your body, an older person, that becomes harder,
Yep.
or you become sick. And we talked about the healthy life expectancy here in the United States. And the healthy life expectancy shows at age 65 is when you expect to maybe have your first health crisis. So all of a sudden, you're thinking you're going to work maybe to age 70 to kind of bridge that gap. And all of a sudden, you have to get, a new knee or a hip replacement, or you have a stent put in.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, you can't work. Now, all of a sudden, what you were hoping to have happen has been altered and you have not saved enough.
So not only has the labor market changed for people that are getting older, the health uh, your health abilities change. Again, there's the physical ability to do the job, and then there's, let's say you can't do the job anymore, like you just said, it's a physically demanding job that you can't do anymore. That adds on to financial stress and emotional stress that goes into that as well, and that also plays a major factor, right?
Yeah, you're working hard, you're trying to save money, you're trying to get to this this number that you feel financially independent
Hmm.
and that you are comfortable in retiring. And that's an added stress as you get older. As we get older, we kind of want to reduce stress, right? You kind of want
It's the goal.
to be comfortable and relaxed.
Yep.
And as you get older and you're trying to make that number and you're trying to get to that financial independent, that wears on you as well.
Yeah. And we're going to get into in a moment how we can figure out how to actually figure out whether or not you can retire on a certain number. But before we get into that, now that you understand why working longer might not be a viable option for many retirees, click on the link in the description to complete our questionnaire. We'll review your answers and send you a personalized video analyzing your specific situation and showing you how to create a retirement strategy that does not rely on working indefinitely. Okay, John, so we just discussed how working longer might not really be a viable option if because of health reasons, right? Not only from a physical demanding standpoint, but also from an emotional and just a financial stress standpoint. If I'm someone who's 65 years old and I have $500,000 and I don't know if I can retire, I'm just starting to research, oh, can I retire? What is the first thing I should be setting myself up to do?
Yeah, I think the first thing you want to do is really take an honest approach of where you are today, right?
Okay.
And I would like to see people to take this look 5 years prior to them wanting to retire. So let's say you're 60 and you want to retire at 65.
Okay.
Well, at 60, we want you to start to take a real deep dive on your situation. Why 5 years? Well, we've seen that 5 years out from retirement allows us to make some adjustments if you're not on the right path, right?
Okay.
We want to kind of catch things early enough that we can make meaningful changes to your situation that will get you back on path, right? Um, so we want to make sure that you do a financial plan. You sit down with the financial advisor and you get an understanding of, most importantly, is how do you envision retirement? What do you and your spouse, or what do you want to do in your retirement years? And we want to make sure that you have an understanding of what that lifestyle costs,
Hmm.
right? And then what are your expenses in today's life? You should have a good understanding of how your portfolio works. Why does it behave certain ways in certain market conditions? Um, are you too risky? Not risky enough? What type of returns are you going to need to earn to get to that financial independence?
Okay.
And then how much money are you going to have to withdraw from your portfolio to live the lifestyle that you want? Now, when we build this financial plan, you want to make sure that we build in, if you think like, hey, I might want to work as a consultant or I'm going to do a part-time job. We want to have realistic numbers in there. And you might even want to run your plan a couple of different ways, showing you work and then showing you not working.
Yep.
And then once you kind of get like, hey, these are the adjustments we need to make to get you on that financial path at age 65. These are the steps we need to take. And you're meeting with your advisor along consistently along the line to continuously make adjustments if adjustments are needed.
I need it. Yeah.
What you don't want to do is wait till you're age 65 and then say, hey, I think I want to retire. And then come to find out you haven't done enough
Right.
and that there are some adjustments that you need to make. And it's going to take some time to make those adjustments. Now you're at age 70. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're giving some of your good, healthy years in retirement to your company versus doing the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
I'd much rather be playing pickleball at age 70 versus did I save enough for my retirement? So you want to make sure we call it the retirement red zone.
Hmm.
5 years before retirement is very crucial, getting a good understanding of where you are. And then the first 5 years after retirement is very critical as well.
We've called it the ostrich effect, where people like they just put their head in their sand, and there's that Schrodinger's cat complex where it's like, if as long as I don't acknowledge what my retirement situation is, I can't find out if I'm not on track for retirement. But that's actually can very much hurt you because you're like you just said, like if you speak to somebody or you even if you just take the time to calculate what your essential expenses and your lifestyle expenses are, and then calculate your PIN and figure out, okay, here's what my portfolio needs. If I'm not there yet, here's what I need to do in order to get to that number. You can set yourself up for success years before you want to retire, rather than like you just said, you get to 65 or you get to 70 and you're like, well, I don't have enough, so I guess I got to keep going. Like,
Yeah, and we're talking about the worst case scenario, right? Like
right.
someone who may not be on the right path. But on the flip side of it, there are individuals who come into our office who feel like they're going to have to work till age 70. And, I can think of a woman I recently met who said, "Oh, I'm not on the right path. I'm going to work till age 70. I'm just never going to be able to retire or retire the way I want to." So the glass was half empty to her. And after we went through our retirement plan process and we went through everything, her situation was much more favorable than she thought she was. And that takes a weight off her back of like,
Mhm.
all right, it was always doom and gloom. Now all of a sudden she sees the light at the end of the tunnel and she's going to retire before age 70.
Yeah, Ryan just did a video for somebody that requested one, and same situation. The guy had $3 million, was afraid that he wasn't gonna have, or he was gonna have to work till he was 70. He was 63. Ryan was kind of went through everything, said, "Yeah, you can retire now. Like you don't have to work another
Yeah.
7 years." And it was pretty incredible to see that like you said, that fear of, oh, I gotta keep working. I gotta go. I'd love to retire at this age, but I don't know if I can. And it's like you've done it. Like you've already hit that. And again, that goes back to the idea of going through the numbers, right? So you said it before, you take your essential expenses, right? And then your what you want your lifestyle expenses to
Lifestyle
be.
expenses to be. Then we got to get a good understanding of where your income's coming from, Social Security, if you're fortunate enough, a pension, when to turn on Social Security, what's the tax ramification of the Social Security, and then come up with what we call a distribution plan. Everyone, for the most part, does a pretty good job of saving money for retirement,
Mhm.
but they don't really think out how am I going to extract money from this? How am I going to do it in a tax efficient manner? How is inflation going to impact me? Am I going to spend the same amount of money between now and the time I'm 95? You have to have a thorough plan put in place with how you envision retirement to be, and you want to start that sooner versus later.
Because at the end of the day, again, working longer might not always be a viable option.
Might not even be an option.
Might not even be an option. John, thank you so much for taking the time to go over this situation. I think that there's a lot of people that are constantly Googling or looking up, do I have to work longer or can I retire today? And this is a great example of if you take the time to kind of do a little bit of legwork now, you can really figure that out sooner than later or before it's too late.
Absolutely.
Awesome. John, thank you so much. Now you know why the common advice to just work longer if you can't afford retirement often fails to acknowledge the harsh realities of the older worker job market, health limitations, and systemic retirement challenges. If you'd like a personalized analysis of your retirement options that acknowledges these realities, click on the link in the description to complete our questionnaire. A partner here at the firm will review your situation and send you a personalized video evaluating your specific situation and develop a strategy that balances your financial needs with the practical limitations that many older workers face. Till next time, take care.